Sometimes the most important question a person asks is not about love or money or where the road leads next. Sometimes it is a small question spoken in a tired voice at the edge of darkness. The kind of question that decides whether someone keeps walking alone into the cold or finally stops running. On a night when the wind cut across the Texas plains like a blade, a woman stepped into the glow of a dying fire and asked a rancher if she could stay. Neither of them knew that the answer would change the shape of their lives before the sun came up. Caleb Turner had made camp beside a dry creek bed 20 miles north of Abilene. 80 head of cattle rested in a loose circle around him, their breathing steady in the night air. His bedroll lay near the fire, rifle within reach, boots still on his feet. He trusted no darkness anymore. The last 3 years had taught him that quiet nights could turn cruel without warning. The fire was nearly ash when he sensed movement. Not the nervous shifting of cattle, not a coyote slinking through brush. Something slower. Careful. His hand went to the rifle before he even turned his head. She stood just beyond the firelight. A woman. Not close enough to claim warmth, not far enough to pretend she had not been seen. Her dress was gray once, now stained with dust and travel. The hem was torn. Her boots were cracked and caked with dried mud. A small carpet bag hung from her wrist like the last thing she owned in this world. Strands of brown hair had escaped their pins and framed a face drawn thin by hunger and stubborn pride. She did not beg. She did not step forward. She simply waited. Caleb kept his rifle lowered, but ready. "You lost?" he asked. Her chin lifted a little. "No." The wind pushed between them. The fire snapped once and settled lower. "Then what are you doing out here alone?" She swallowed. He could see the tremor in her hands, even if her voice stayed steady. "May I warm up by your fire?" she asked. "Just until dawn." The words were simple. No drama, no tears. Just a question. Caleb studied her the way he studied a skittish horse, looking for danger, looking for lies. He saw none, only exhaustion and something else beneath it. Something like pride that had already been broken once and refused to break again. He poured coffee into his spare tin cup and set it on the ground between them. "If you mean trouble," he said, "you picked the wrong camp." "I don't mean trouble." She stepped forward into the light. Up close, he noticed the pale mark on her left ring finger where a band used to sit. He noticed the way she kept her back straight, despite the miles that had clearly worn her down. He noticed she did not look at his rifle. She crouched near the fire, but kept distance from him. Took the cup with both hands. The coffee shook as she lifted it. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara." He nodded once. "Caleb." They said nothing after that. The cattle shifted in the dark. The sky stretched wide above them, scattered with cold stars. Clara held the cup long after the coffee was gone, as if the warmth might vanish if she let it go. Caleb did not ask what sent her walking alone across ranch country at night. He had learned not to press into wounds unless invited. It was she who finally spoke. "I was supposed to be married last week," she said, staring at the fire. Caleb did not answer. He let her continue. "My father owed money. The man I was to marry expected $200. We could not pay it." Her jaw tightened. They called off the wedding in front of everyone. The wind lifted ash from the fire and carried it away. They said a woman without a dowry brings nothing worth keeping. Caleb stared into the coals. "And then?" he asked. "The landlady told me I could not stay, said it would look improper." Clara's mouth curved in something that was not quite a smile. "So I walked." "To where?" Anywhere that wasn't there. Silence returned, the kind that presses on a person's ribs. Caleb added mesquite to the fire. Flames rose again, lighting her face gold. She looked younger in that light. Not weak, just tired. "You ever worked cattle?" he asked. Her eyes lifted. Surprise flickered there. "Yes." "Milk cows?" "Yes." "Ride?" "I grew up on a farm." Caleb nodded slowly. He had planned to reach the rail station in Hayes in 3 weeks. 80 head meant money enough to fix his barn roof before winter, enough to hire help for once. He looked at her blistered hands. "I'm short a hand," he said at last. 4 weeks' drive to Hayes, $1 a day, meals. You work, you earn it. No charity. Clara did not hesitate. Yes. Her answer came fast, like she feared he might change his mind. Caleb tossed another stick into the fire. "You sleep there." He pointed to the far side of camp, well away from his bedroll. "We move at first light." Clara nodded. She did not thank him. But when she lay down with his spare blanket around her shoulders, she did not keep one eye open like someone expecting to be driven away. Before dawn, Caleb woke to the smell of coffee. Clara was already up. She had rebuilt the fire, set his dented blue pot over it. The cattle were beginning to stir in the gray light. He watched her for a long moment before she noticed. "Figured I'd start earning that $1, she said quietly. He almost smiled. Almost. By the time the sun crested the horizon, Clara was in the saddle on his older mare, riding the left flank of the herd, exactly where he told her to stay. She watched the red brindle cow that liked to bolt. She leaned forward when cattle drifted. She did not complain when dust coated her face or when the rains burned her palms raw. By noon, she was bleeding from both hands. She said nothing. Caleb noticed. And somewhere between the first mile and the 50th, between silence and work, and the steady rhythm of hooves across dry earth, something small shifted. Not love. Not yet. Just recognition. 2 people who had learned how to survive alone, riding side by side under a hard sky. And neither of them yet understood how dangerous that could be. The 3rd day on the trail was when Caleb understood she was not going to quit. The sun rose hard and white over the plains, and the wind carried dust that stung the eyes and dried the throat. 80 head of cattle moved slow and stubborn, their hooves pounding the earth into a steady rhythm that never stopped. Clara rode the left flank like he told her, back straight, eyes sharp. By mid-morning, the red brindle broke. The cow lunged away from the herd without warning, head high, panic in its stride. Most new hands would freeze. Some would chase too late. Clara did neither. She kicked the mare forward, cutting across the dust. Her hat nearly flew off as she leaned low over the horse's neck. She did not shout. She did not panic. She angled her body just enough to block the cow's path, turning it slow, steady, back toward the herd. Caleb watched without speaking. When she returned to position, her breathing was hard, but her face was calm. "Good cut," he said. It was the first praise he had offered. She only nodded. By afternoon, the sky darkened without warning. No rain yet, just a thick heaviness in the air. The cattle grew restless. Their ears flicked. Their bodies tightened. Caleb felt it in his bones before he heard it. Thunder, far off at first, then closer. "Keep them tight," he called. Clara nodded and rode wider to keep strays from breaking. The wind picked up, snapping against their clothes. Dust swirled around hooves. The herd began to drift, as one large nervous body. Then lightning split the sky. It struck somewhere beyond the ridge, bright and violent. The cattle bolted. 80 animals running blind is not noise. It is chaos. Clara did not hesitate. She drove her mare straight into the moving wall of muscle and horn. She leaned, turned, shouted now, her voice cutting through the storm. Caleb rode the opposite side, pushing inward, trying to bend panic back into order. Another strike. Closer. The ground shook. One small calf stumbled and went down. Clara saw it. The herd surged around the fallen body like water around stone. The calf struggled, legs tangled, unable to rise. "Leave it!" Caleb shouted over the wind. "We'll lose the whole herd!" But Clara was already moving. She jumped from the saddle before the mare had fully stopped. She hit the ground hard, nearly falling beneath pounding hooves. Dust blinded her. Noise swallowed everything. She reached the calf and dropped to her knees, pulling it upright by sheer force. It was heavier than it looked, slick with fear and mud. The cattle pressed around her. "Clara!" Caleb's voice cut through again. She did not answer. She lifted the calf against her chest. It kicked weakly, confused. She staggered to her feet and pushed toward the edge of the herd. A horn clipped her shoulder. She stumbled, but did not fall. Caleb reached her then, forcing a gap in the moving mass with Dust's broad chest. He grabbed her arm and dragged her clear just as another wave of cattle thundered past. They stood in the storm, breathless. The calf trembled in her arms. "You could have been killed," Caleb said, his voice low now, not angry. "Something else." "It would have been trampled," she answered. The rain finally came, hard and cold. They drove the herd into a low draw and waited out the worst of it. By dusk, the storm had moved east, leaving mud and silence behind. Clara sat near the fire later that night, her shoulder bruised and swelling. Caleb noticed the way she tried to move it without letting him see the pain. He handed her a cloth soaked in cool water. She looked at him. "Hold it there," he said. "It'll swell worse by morning." She obeyed. They ate in quiet. The calf she had saved lay curled near its mother, alive. After the fire burned low, Caleb spoke into the darkness. "Why didn't you leave town sooner?" he asked. She stared into the coals. "Because I kept thinking someone would change their mind," she said. "That if I waited long enough, they would see I wasn't worthless." The word hung heavy. Caleb looked at her sharply. "You believe that?" "No," she said after a moment. But they did. The cattle breathed around them. The sky had cleared again, stars sharp and bright. "People decide things about you," she continued quietly. "Once they decide, they don't unsee it. It's easier to carry the story they made up than to learn the truth." Caleb shifted, the firelight catching the lines in his face. "And what story did they make about you?" "That I failed at being a woman." Silence. He reached for a stick and pushed the embers. "They're fools," he said. She gave a small laugh. "That doesn't change what they think." "No," he agreed, "but it changes what I think." Her eyes lifted. He did not look away this time. "You rode into a stampede for something that wasn't yours," he said. "You work harder than any hand I've hired, and you haven't complained once." The wind softened around them. "That's not failure," he finished. Clara swallowed. "Then what is it?" Caleb held her gaze for a long moment. "Courage." The words settled between them like something fragile. Clara looked back at the calf sleeping near its mother. "I just didn't want it to die alone," she said softly. Caleb understood that sentence meant more than the animal. Later, when they lay in their bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire, neither of them slept quickly. Clara stared at the sky and felt something unfamiliar inside her chest. Not shame, not fear. Possibility. Caleb lay on his back, hands folded over his chest, listening to the steady breathing of the herd and the softer breathing of the woman 20 feet away. He had hired her because he needed help. But sometime between the storm and the saved calf and the quiet talk by firelight, he began to understand something else. She had not asked for charity. She had asked to stay, and he was starting to hope she might. Dawn broke soft and gold over the plains, like the storm had never happened. Clara woke before Caleb. She lay still for a moment, listening to the herd shifting in the early light. The calf she had saved bleated once, thin but strong. Its mother answered. Alive. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. By the time Caleb rose, she already had the fire going. Coffee simmered in the blue pot. Cornmeal waited in the skillet. They did not speak about the night before. But something had changed. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. They rode north again after breakfast. The ground was softer from rain. Hooves sank deeper. The herd moved slower. Clara's shoulder hurt when she lifted her arm, but she did not mention it. Caleb noticed anyway. By noon, he pulled the herd to a rest near a narrow creek. "Let them graze," he said. They dismounted. Clara walked toward the water, knelt, cupped it in her hands, and splashed her face. The cold shocked her awake. When she stood, Caleb was beside her. "You're limping," he said. "I'm fine." "You're not," she exhaled. "It'll pass." He studied her in silence. Then he did something unexpected. He stepped closer. Carefully, gently, he reached for her arm and examined the bruise spreading beneath her sleeve. His fingers were rough but careful, work-worn hands that knew pressure and restraint. "You don't have to prove anything," he said quietly. She looked up at him. "I'm not proving anything." "Then what are you doing?" The question lingered between them. Clara searched for the truth. "I'm staying," she said. He held her gaze. "Why?" She did not look away this time. "Because you didn't look at me like I was something broken." The creek ran steady beside them. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Clara," he said slowly, "I hired you because I needed help." "I know. But that's not why I'm glad you're here." Her heart stuttered in her chest. The wind moved through the grass. The herd grazed in quiet. He stepped back, clearing his throat like the words had come too close to something he was not ready to name. They rode again by late afternoon. The rail station at Hayes appeared on the horizon 2 days later, smoke rising from the locomotive stacks. The smell of coal and livestock filled the air. They penned the cattle. 79 made it. One had wandered too far during the storm and never returned. Caleb counted twice. His shoulders eased when he finished. "Good drive," he said. Clara nodded. The buyers argued. Caleb stood firm. The price was fair enough. When the money was handed over, he counted it once, then again. He folded Clara's wages separately and held them out to her. 4 weeks, he said. You earned every dollar. She took the money. It felt heavier than it should. What will you do now? He asked. It was a simple question, but it carried weight. There was a train leaving east by nightfall. She could buy a ticket, start over somewhere no one knew her name, no one knew her story. Clara looked at the rails stretching toward the horizon. Then she looked at Caleb. He stood there, hat in hand, dust still clinging to his boots. A man who had lost more than he spoke about. A man who had not once treated her like charity. A man who had answered her small question by making space for her at his fire. She folded the money and placed it back into his hand. "I'll take half," she said. "The rest buys feed for your stock." He frowned. "You earned it." "I know." Silence. "Clara." She stepped closer. "You asked me why I stayed," she said. "I didn't know then." "And now?" Her voice softened. "Because I wasn't warming my hands at your fire." He did not breathe. "I was finding my place." The noise of the rail yard faded. The world narrowed to the space between them. "I don't have a dowry," she continued. "I don't have a family waiting. I don't have a town that wants me back." He stepped closer now. "What do you have?" he asked. She lifted her chin. "I have work in these hands. I have grit enough to ride through storms. And I have a choice." The wind caught her hair. "And I choose to stay." The words landed steady. Not desperate. Not pleading. Chosen. Caleb's expression shifted in a way she had never seen before. The guarded look he carried like armor eased. "You're sure?" he asked. "Yes." His hand moved, hesitant at first, then certain. He reached for hers. Her fingers were rough from rains and rope burns. His were scarred from barbed wire and years of labor. They fit. "My ranch is 2 days south," he said quietly. "Small place. Needs fixing. Needs hands that won't quit. Good thing I don't quit." He almost smiled. Almost. "Separate cabin," he added. "Proper." She laughed softly. "I trust you." The train whistle blew in the distance. People moved around them, but neither stepped back. For the first time in a long while, Caleb felt something that was not grief pressing on his ribs. Hope. They rode out of Hayes together at sunset. No ceremony, no promises spoken out loud. Just 2 horses moving side by side toward open land. The sky burned orange and red behind them. The plains stretched wide ahead. Clara did not look back at the town. Caleb did not rush ahead. They rode even. Equal. As the sun dipped low, she spoke without looking at him. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For letting me stay." He looked at her then. "You asked to warm up by my fire," he said. "And you said yes." He shook his head slightly. "No," he corrected. "I said stay." The light faded. The road stretched forward. And for the first time in years, neither of them felt alone, riding into the dark.